As we come into gate number 23 now, assimilation, part of Taurus season, it's really interesting to see how we are in between the two gates that are associated with the ring of water. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to gate number 2, receptivity, I highly encourage you to go back and to listen to that recording because it really was about the way of the feminine, the way of water, the way of flow, and how we can become receptive to the natural impulses of life and allow life to guide us rather than fighting against the natural current of life itself. Coming into gate number 23 now, we are starting a journey through the throat center. And the throat center within human design is the center of communication, manifestation, and taking action. So in your human design chart, all the energy of your different centers and gate activations are trying to find their way out through the throat. So the throat is where we really start to express who we are and what we are. And we're going to find as we take this journey together that in between the ring of water, the flow of being in the flow of life, we're either going to try to overcomplicate things or we're going to learn how to simplify things. And it's all about trusting in the timing and looking at how much are we accumulating? How much energy are we putting towards something? So let us dive right in and take a look at the teachings of the I Ching. And this is really then going to focus on the great need for speech skills, how we communicate. And communication is so much greater than just verbalizing. It's how we take in energy, how we process energy, how we express that energy, and most of all, how we're listening to the vibrations and what we are listening to. So this really helps us in this energy and the highest aspects of it to stand up for your truth. And your truth is that inner guidance. It is what is right for you and you alone. And standing up for that in the face of adversity or coming out of that and considering yourself obliged to take some kind of action. So we're always at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads in between that ring of water. And you can either really stand your ground and trust your inner guidance and move towards whatever is that facing adversity, whatever is coming at you and challenging you, and not strain from where you are directed to go, or looking at that and following a path that seems to be easier or it's pleasing to somebody else. So we want to really move deep within ourselves to contemplate this gate, to check in with our energy, to notice our energy, and to be very mindful of whether or not we're making life more complicated or are we trusting in the simplicity of life itself. When we look at our human design chart, we're going to find that activated throat center in the third shape from the top. And if you have it colored in your chart, it's defined, you're going to have consistent energy to the way that you metabolize, the way that you communicate and express yourself, and how you take action. And that's always in relationship to whatever one of these numbers, known as gates, you have circled in your design. You may have gate 23 circled in your chart, which means that this is something that is very consistent for you as we talk about its teachings. If this center is white in your chart, it's undefined, then you may find it a little bit harder to express yourself because you're open to many different ways of communicating. And in our openness, when we find that if we try to communicate from the mind, we try to think about what we want to say, that gets jumbled in there. It has a really hard time coming into the world of form and being understood. When you learn to trust in your openness and you trust in the uniqueness of your voice and the timing of your voice and allow it to come from the body, from the flow of your energy, then things just naturally occur. So when we're looking very specifically at gate number 23, the voice within this gate really expresses itself as I know or I don't know. And it is that ability to communicate individual insights. So it has the potential to speak one's mind because it has a potential to connect to the ajna, the center right above it, in its energy flow. And we'll talk about that channel of energy in the next slide. When we're looking right at the 23, this is really that potential to express very deep, very profound insight. And it's really designed to help stimulate people to think in new ways and to try a new approach. So this might sound crazy to individuals. It might feel like it's off the wall, that it is a fabrication of someone's imagination. But it is very specifically designed to be able to express its uniqueness and to offer a new way of doing something. So, of course, we have to be open to receiving that new idea, that new insight, and that includes ourselves. That includes not allowing our mind to override the wisdom, that knowing, and turning the knowing into a I'm not sure, I don't know. So it's about trusting in yourself and trusting in your ability to communicate that. When we're looking at assimilating something, it's really to get to the point. So it's designed to move away all of those fillers, stripping away everything that is not essential in its communication. So this is also where we can see someone who is very bold, very direct, gets right to that point, doesn't want to embellish things, wants to cut to the chase. So sometimes it can come with some impatience. And we're also learning in that pressure to communicate, pressure to speak our truth and share our knowings with others, to get to the point, to offer some expression of insight, that whatever we say and whatever we do can bring very dramatic change to our own world and into the world of others. And that has many different aspects to it, positive, negative, everywhere in between. How we express ourselves and how that is assimilated by others, brought into the other part of the equation, does really matter in effective communication. When we receive that deep insight, or we start to cultivate a knowing within yourself, when you really take time to breathe into you, to stop and to pause and to take that breath, that's like inviting in the element of air to help bring clarity to your message. And it's also the necessary pause that's going to help you to align to that inner awareness, your inner compass, that inner knowing of the perfection of timing. So it's trusting in yourself that the cells in your body, you receive the download, you receive the intuition, the hit, the guidance. There is no urgency to have to share it right away. You're not going to forget it. And we can spend an awful lot of energy trying to hold on to the message, trying to feel like we got to tell that person right now, we got to share this with the world. But what if it's still evolving? So when we learn to pause and take a breath to get the clarity of what is being received, letting it become embedded within the cells of the body, and then trusting that, that message is going to come back up again. It's going to rise of its own accord when it's needed and when it's open from the other to share in that exchange of information. But a lot of times we find ourselves under that pressure, just blurting things out. And we blurt it out very prematurely in that haste to get the message out, in that haste to try to fix something, to be of service, to release ourselves of the pressure so we don't so-called forget. And when we do that, the timing is off. The timing often falls on deaf ears. People aren't interested in receiving the message. they're unable to receive the message is misinterpreted, it's not understood. You may not have all the pieces to the information, so it's scattered. So when we really learn to fall back in and trust in your natural timing, moving us back into that ring of water, the teachings on either side of this gate, standing in the stream, standing in the flow, allowing the body, the feminine, the natural rhythm and impulses of life itself to allow for the flow of communication. Then it becomes effortless. So it's really important here to pause in your own awareness and ask, is this message that I'm receiving, is it ready to be received by others? Is it clear? Do you understand all the pieces? Is it easy for you to articulate, to let it flow from you? Is the other person open to listening? Are they ready to receive that information? And do you have the whole message or just a piece of the message? Is it intended for the highest good? And all too often, and I'm sure we've all been in this experience, we've been the recipient of unsolicited advice. Someone's need to express something and tell us something that often then leaves a hurt, or leaves a shame, or leaves a guilt, or leaves some kind of inner questioning that feeds insecurity. And all too often when we're operating from the shadow or from the fear, we can speak that mind without taking that breath, without catching it. And we can really put a lot of pressure or embarrassment onto someone else. And we've all been there. We've both been on the receiving end of that hurt. We've been on the giving end of that hurt. So as we are looking at the image, taking a breath allows for that cord to tighten, for the energy to flow very simply from point A to point B without all this opportunity for distortion. It also requires somebody to really be listening, to be receptive to, I'm willing to take in what you have to offer, and the other then being able to speak very clearly what that offering is. So we have a long way to go in learning how to communicate and to be really mindful of what it is we are communicating. And to go back a slide, it's not just about speaking our voice, it's about what is coming from the mind, what is dripping down into that throat center to be expressed, to be articulated. And is it coming from fear? Is it coming from emotion? Is it coming from stress? Is it coming from the heart, the human heart that is conditioned? Is it coming from a pressure within the gut instinct? Is it in directional alignment to love, to the highest good? So as you can feel, there's a lot of pressure there to communicate because all of these centers within your design, these flows, these possibilities, want to make its way out to be expressed. But what is being expressed and why is it being expressed? This also brings us into what is known as the channel of structuring. And this is where you might want to look at your chart again to see if you have this channel within your design. And if so, this is a really big energy flow for you. The channel of structuring is between the throat and the ajna. So the ajna is like that third eye awareness, but it can also be our small mind, the human mind, or the larger potential of that third eye. So the ajna center does carry certain anxieties. We have to move through our own anxieties, our own fears, in order to stand in the structure of ourself, to build a deeper faith. In this case, the channel of structuring has the potential to be one of the most empowering or potentially disempowering. And whenever we have that urgency to speak our mind, it's the same thing. Is it coming from our idea, our perception? our decision for somebody else and how they should live their life? Or is it coming from the higher guidance, the higher divinity that is flowing through you as a channel? So it's always about noticing, what are you articulating? What are you putting out into the world? And who does it serve? Is there an agenda attached to that? It does carry the ability in here to really see and express the bigger picture, helping to bring structure into the lives of others. And it can very often receive a lot of downloads and a lot of insights that are ahead of its time. So it's looking at the structure for humanity, it's looking into the future. And it's not uncommon sometimes, if you're really open to channeling, if you're receiving flashes of insight, you're getting downloads, that you're getting that at lightning speed. It just happens, it's just there. And it may be something that is going to occur 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It is the future possibility of what can come if we choose to walk in that direction. So you may be having a hard time communicating that to individuals who are not forward thinking. If they're stuck in the past and they're not willing to look beyond their problem or to move out of their own pattern, they're not with you in what you are receiving. So a lot of times we receive information as channels and empaths when we're really open to that, for you to know the diverse possibilities that individual has, or the opportunities for a business to go in another direction. So a lot of those downloads are to inspire hope and inspire creativity and inspire empowerment. But if they are shared too quickly, if we take it upon ourselves to, I have to be the one to mold that individual, to make sure that they're walking a course, to set the structure for them, then you're not allowing for the natural structures to take place. So really understanding that these messages, these information, the bigger pictures that are coming through, and we as channels may not even understand those bigger pictures. So it takes a process of assimilating that information to break it down, to take something that is so big in scale and to then easily dissect it, to then feed it out a little bit at the time to help other people digest it, take it in, contemplate it, integrate it, and then move forward when they're ready. So you may be in a situation where you're building an awful lot of things and you're waiting for individuals to catch up. And it may feel like nobody's into my work, nobody's buying into this, nobody's getting this, this is too complicated. But it's trusting that you're being asked to walk ahead and to build the structure so that when people are ready, or organizations are ready, or the environment is ready, the structure is in place. The structure has been created. So you may have to go through your own assimilation of trusting in whatever it is that you are acquiring and stripping away all of the gunk and fine-tuning it and going back to the foundation of you to see, well, what else is required in the support so that you're fully ready when the timing is correct, when it's being asked to be brought fully out into the world of form. That gate 43 and its connection within the ajna. We talked about the ajna center having natural fears, and in this case, related to mental anxieties. In gate 43, which is known as breakthrough, the gate of breakthrough, the mental anxiety in that is this energy of, my ideas are just too weird, or my ideas are going to be rejected by others. And in understanding that you are getting something that is very highly likely new, and you may not even understand it, there can be a lot of energy, a lot of anxiety of, well, nobody's going to accept this. Nobody's going to understand that this is too far out of left field, so to speak. But when you allow yourself time to assimilate it, to hold it, to nurture it, to allow it to break open the seed, to sprout up, to grow leaves, to flower, to really come into your awareness of what this is, to fall in love with the design of the structuring that is being brought forward through you. Then you stand in the power of being so passionate about what it is you're doing that other people just naturally, magnetically gravitate towards it. And it's not for everyone. We're not for everyone. We live in a world where we try so hard to fit in, to blend in, to be accepted, but then it becomes a version of you that is not authentic. When you allow yourself to be who you truly are and you pour the passion into what it is that you're expressing, you will naturally get in the flow of things those that resonate with the energy, with the vibration, and with the message. So you're having to trust in yourself. You're having to trust in the ability to allow your own unique expression come out into the world. And that does come with fear. I can feel that within myself, the tendency of the throat to want to shut down, the gulping back of what are people going to think in that? So there is a vulnerability that comes within the self-expression, but that is the beauty of it. The more authentic you are, the more natural you are, the less you try to perfect something, the more people can just see the validity, the potential, the message that is trying to come through. So there is the potential there to be seen either as a genius or as a freak. We are not for everyone. Take a look out to the inventors of the world. Take a look at Einstein. How many people called Einstein a freak, but yet he is a genius, an absolute genius. So we often fear that which we do not understand. So when we strip away the labels and you do something just because it is a natural expression for you and it is feeding into your heart, operating from the heart, then it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter if those ideas are too weird because there's just something in what you are bringing forward that is going to be like, well, let's just try it. This feels absolutely crazy, but let's just try. Let's just see what happens. Let's just see who else might be on board, who else might come into the fold of structuring this into form, into creation. So ability and truth are really separated by understanding. And there is a real difference between knowledge, which comes from our textbooks, and wisdom, which comes from all of this unknown. To be able to express one's own opinion and preferences is a very structured life of our own agenda. Buying into the wisdom that we are, or the knowledge that we are given in the schools and in the structures. But when we allow for that divine expression to provide wisdom and that flows through you, that is the wisdom that trusts in the timing and the delivery and just allows it to be natural. And this is where I really encourage, those of you that have that throat center white, and you may find extra pressure in there to try to speak or to feel an urgency to speak, relax into that. Allow yourself time to just sit in the uncomfortability when nobody is talking and notice the dialogue of the mind that says you have to fill in the silence and help yourself to be comfortable just sitting in the silence. Why is it your responsibility to create noise to fill the space? Because a lot of times we're very afraid to sit in the silence because then we're having to tune in to the wisdom. So notice for yourself if you're able to catch the urgency that wants to express itself, if you can practice breathing into that, allowing for the clarity, allowing for it to assimilate within your own body, and then to trust the impulse of its expression that doesn't come from the mind, but it comes from the high heart. It comes from that center of self that's in true alignment to that higher guidance. And you may have a message, and then a week later, a perfect opportunity comes to deliver the message. It might be a month later, it might be a year later, it may never come because you recognize that you were meant to receive it. It wasn't to go beyond your own growth, your own integration within that. We're going to move into what is known as the gene keys now to put the key in to open up the gate and bring us into the inner alchemy work within ourselves. So here is where we're going to look at the shadow of complexity, that dilemma of the timing, how much we accumulate things that can keep us stuck, really looking at bringing that gift of simplicity and reaching for the highest light essence of quintessence. And these are being summarized from the Book of the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. I highly encourage you, if you don't already, to purchase your own copy, follow along, do the deep contemplations for yourself. Because whenever we're looking at opening up a gate and turning a key to go into that gateway, well, you're the only one that can do the self-actualization, because how it shows up for you is different than how it shows up for someone else. So we can share, we can explore this together, but it really is about spending that time in your own contemplation and practicing with the concepts in order to get the lessons that are meant to be shared for you in this lifetime. So let's start right off with the shadow of complexity and that dilemma of timing and accumulation. And that shadow of complexity is really concerning the connection between thinking, knowing, and how we express that knowing through language. So complexity is the result of our human mind trying to control its environment. And we can look at the whole concept of words and how we all have a meaning and an attachment to words. But a word for one individual is not going to have the same meaning for another individual. So language then becomes one of our greatest barriers. But language is also beyond our word. It's our ability to feel, to sense, to know, to receive. So we want to tap into the larger energetic vibrations and not get so stuck on this means that, right? Creating the structure and then trying to put everybody in to adhering to that same structure. Whenever we create those structures, it is really coming from a desire for us to feel safe. So the more our mind tries to create this feeling of security in our world, the more complicated and unsafe the world is actually becoming. And we can look at how we do it to ourselves through our own self-imposed structures, having an agenda, having a to-do list, putting ourselves on a schedule. I'm allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to do that. I got to eat at a certain time. I got to sleep at a certain time. I got to be somewhere at a certain time, or existing in our comfort zones. I like this. I don't like that. I can go here, but I can't go there. I can be with this people, but I can't be with those people, right? So we all have these self-imposed structures that keep us out of the natural flow of life. We try to control our environment. We've also been conditioned to adopt a lot of structures within our world. Structures by the organizations, economic systems, financial systems, governments, religion, healthcare, right? You go into the school system, there's a structure. Everything is built on having a different kind of operating system. And operating systems do serve a role, and they are necessary in certain components. But if they're not adaptable to change, and if they're not relevant for today's world and today's society and today's needs, then those structures become outdated. And that's where it becomes a problem, is when we're trying to hold on to ways that it always was and not letting the new come in, not letting the next generation help to guide and to teach, but keeping the old mindset. Well, that's just the way it's always been done. Why are we trying to change that? So looking at how affected you are by your own structures and by the structures around you, and noticing how that does make your life more complicated. Does it throw off your sense of natural timing? Have you accumulated too many ideas, thoughts, limitations, perspectives, mindset that is keeping you trapped in there? So the complexity in the mind of the individual really creates a lot of misunderstanding and division. This is where we see that divide. So we either say the wrong things, do the wrong things, or we say things at the wrong time or do things at the wrong time. So there's this disconnect within our communication flow. And a quote from Richard Rudd, the language flows directly out of your state of consciousness. So the more profoundly you understand and embrace the shadow, the freer of it you become. The more you recognize your own self-imposed structures, the more you can start to loosen its effect on you. The more you start to see the structures out in society, the more you are aware of the control and of the fear behind them. You're seeing the bigger picture. You're seeing the hidden agendas. You're going to stop and pause to really decide for yourself, is that right for me? So the more we become aware, the more we ascend, the more we look at our shadows, the more we recognize it within ourselves, the higher our state of consciousness begins. The more profoundly we understand, the more we wrap the understanding around the shadow and we go, I see you, but you're no longer running the show. So then the light comes up, you become freer because you see with more clarity and you know with more clarity. At the shadow level, there's this overwhelming urge to express yourself. And we saw that connection between the head, the ajna, and that throat center. So just that flow of, I got to get this out, I got to speak my mind, I'm going to tell people what I think. And sometimes that becomes a badge of honor. People get very proud of, I just speak it like it is. But when you really lean into that, are you speaking it out of fear? Are you speaking it because you are afraid that that expression is going to be gone, or you're trying to be a certain somebody, or you don't want to be challenged? And being very honest with yourself in that. Or looking at how quickly you feel an urge to jump in and take action. I got to help them. I got to save them. I got to fix this. I got to come up with an answer. And how much that can really exhaust yourself. Or it can be out of timing. Maybe somebody's not appreciative of that. Somebody gets mad at you for that. You feel it's coming from the heart, the goodness of your heart, and then the recipient does not feel the same kind of gratitude. When we react so quickly under that urge to do something right away, to speak right away, we're not listening. So we can become deaf. We're either not listening to ourselves or we're not listening to the other. And when we talk about the other, it's more than just the other person speaking. It's about being able to tune in to their higher self, to ask what is really needed for their highest good. So when we operate from that shadow frequency of complexity, we're not really relating to others. It really is all about the self and helping the self to relieve the pressure to just exist within that own world. It doesn't have a relationship, a connection with anybody else because it's scattered in that. It's unaware of what is going on inside you. So being unaware of the truth of your feelings, your emotions, your hurts, your pains, your fears, the why behind that urgency to have to do something. Being uncontrolled in that expression of self. Feeling like, well, I've just always done that. That's just who I am. Well, what if you're more than that? What if you don't have to do that? It comes with a desire to be right. So it's really not open to listening either to a higher wisdom or somebody else's opinion. It is really stuck in their own opinion. And they're going to share that opinion with everybody else. And it's going to talk over everybody else. And it's not going to take in any other perspectives. So it's not seeing the bigger picture in that. It's going to sound like a broken record, repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again. The thoughts, the beliefs, they're on repeat. And you may be listening to this going, well, that's not who I am. But I'm going to challenge you to pay attention to your thoughts and how your thoughts speak to your heart. That internal dialogue that keeps us stuck in a narrative, a belief system of what you can and cannot do, of what you should express and you shouldn't express, what action you can take or allowed to take and you're not allowed to take. And you may be surprised at how much you might be policing yourself, limiting yourself, putting a structure over yourself that is preventing you from being free. There's also a tendency in communication to believe that somebody can read your mind, that they're reading your thoughts, that they can see what you see in your head, that they're getting you at that deeper level. So, and oftentimes there's a tendency to then talk at somebody instead of communicating to them. And if you notice in conversation that the other person starts feeling really uncomfortable, this is why. There's a disconnect in there where they're not really participating in the communication. You're either talking over their head, right? So it feels like it's belittling them because there's a belief that they can see everything that you can. So you're not trying to make them feel ignorant or to dumb things down. It's a lack of being able to articulate what you are receiving because it's not ready quite yet to be shared. There's also this unconscious fear in the shadow energy of being excluded by other people or meeting intolerance. And this is where it's interesting because it does the same thing that it is afraid of. Because it is afraid of being excluded, it forces itself to be included. Because it doesn't want to meet intolerance, it operates itself through the frequency of intolerance. It'll interrupt other people, it'll override other people, it'll insist that it is correct. So it is intolerant of everybody else's feelings, perspectives, and opinions. So communication without mindful consideration creates enormous complexity through our misunderstandings. And how many times have you had a misunderstanding with somebody just due to some kind of gap in communication? You said something and somebody else took it entirely the wrong way, or they went completely in the opposite direction of what it is that you expressed. Or yourself, how many times have you received something and created this big story around it, only to then find out you didn't have the full picture? You didn't get all the information, but yet you went through this whole hurt and pain in the experience because of that misunderstanding. So we all have experiences in our life where we can reflect back to really contemplate on these different elements to recognize the shadow within ourselves. When we're operating from the shadow level, we often see speech difficulties. So this is where we can see either verbal diarrhea, not being able to stop talking because that pressure is so great, or what is known as dumbness. And dumbness is the inability to express oneself. So literally being frozen in fear and not being able to articulate. So even though your brain may hear the language inside your head, translating it to your vocal cords is another matter. So at that shadow frequency, what's happening is it's misfiring, leading then to language patterns that are not in harmony to the situation or to the listener. And if you've ever listened to music that is off key, you may notice how your ears just want to shut down, right? Like you just want to get out of there. Or certain tones, certain vibrations. For me, it's somebody who whines and talks in a whine, and my body just goes, oh, just cringes with that. And we all have certain tones that we just don't resonate with. So there is an interruption within the energetic frequency, within the communication flow, that it's just not connecting. And I love this picture of the tree being the mind and then the heart right in there, because we have such potential to speak from the heart and come out into branching into the greater mind, the higher mind, or really staying stuck in the narrative, in the branches of our own limitation. And it's beautiful because when you really start to notice your shadow and you start to then move into the gift aspect, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, this is where we start to realize that we can release the pressure of the communication. That the gift of communication, it doesn't lie in the speaker's linguistic skills, in your ability to talk with those words and that, but it's coming from the heart. So whenever you have even the smallest trace of fear in your speech, if you're not believing in yourself, the speech can never be fully integrated by the listener. But when somebody speaks or they write or they take action from the heart, you're going to understand at least some of what they are saying, regardless of how they say it. It's not about being perfect. It's not about getting all your words right. It's not about rehearsing your speech. It's about the authenticity of the flow of the communication that penetrates into the heart of the other, and it goes right into the cells, and something inside them awakens to that. It is natural. It can't be forced. It has to come from the higher self that flows through that frequency of love to bring us up and out and into a higher realm of communication. So there's a repressive side and there's a reactive side to the shadow. And this is an opportunity for you to see, are you naturally more repressive or are you more reactive? Or do you see yourself in a combination of both? Because the idea is to really become aware of it within you so that you can learn to call in the gift aspect, and then that shadow aspect goes to the background. So notice for yourself, if you are repressive, this is what we call dumb. And dumb does not mean stupid. Dumb means inabilities to express oneself or an unwillingness to express what you truly think. So language is held back either by the internal pressure, so the mind saying, I can't say that, I'm not safe to say that, I don't know how to say that, or external oppression. We have many cultures, religions, different relationships throughout the world where people are essentially voiceless. They're voiceless out of fear. They're being shadowed over by some kind of external force. So it is literally being choked by fear. And whether you have your own internal pressure or something external from yourself that has really shut that down and closed off that throat chakra. If you've ever experienced being choked by fear, having a stage fright, not being able to speak clearly, or just choosing under that pressure, that sensation in the throat, to remain silent because that's just easier. That's how you learned how to cope with that energy, with that gulping down of not quite knowing what to say or how to say it or how to translate what it is you were receiving. And a lot of times we see this in children if they don't have the proper structure in place to help them learn to communicate or to encourage open communication. And I know for myself, that was very much my truth. I hid under the shadow of calling myself shy because I did not know how to articulate. And oftentimes, if I did articulate, it was the wrong timing or it was falling on deaf ears. So it became much easier to just say I was shy and to be under that umbrella and to hear my parents describe me as shy and teachers describe me as shy. And then that got me off the hook of having to communicate. I could live in my own little world. Well, at some point in your life and in your journey, that became a big barrier. And it took me a long time to recognize that I'm not shy. I actually have a lot to express. But now I have to learn how to express it. I have to trust in its expression. I have to work through the physical fears of expressing that self and knowing it's okay. It's not about perfecting things. It's about having the courage to allow your natural expression to come to life. And that means that it does go through a period of being distorted, feeling choked, feeling closed off, having to breathe into that, having to relax, needing to practice some more, feeling the fear, feeling the shutdown, opening back up again. It's really allowing yourself to go through your process. So that is the repressive side of the shadow of complexity. When we look at the reactive side, and I love this picture, this image, because we can have a ton of thoughts coming through that we don't talk about, but they just don't stop flowing. So the mind is so busy, right? So that also becomes a barrier to communication. So at the reactive side of complexity, you cannot stop talking, whether it's coming out the mouth or it's coming in the constant stream of thoughts. And what's happening is it's operating with this general mistiming within the brain, within the neurological of the brain. And it creates enormous interference and fragmentation wherever you go. So it could be having a conversation with somebody and just dominating the conversation because you're talking the whole time. Nobody else can get another word in. Or somebody's talking to you and the mind just is thinking about everything else. So when the other person is done talking, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember a word that they said. There's also the tendency to say the wrong thing or saying the right thing but at the wrong time. So it doesn't land properly. It doesn't have the effect, the intention behind it. It doesn't have that natural seamless flow of the communication. It feels very forced, very fragmented in that. It really tends to overcomplicate everything. So this is where we see somebody who is talking in circles, they're over explaining everything, but they never actually get to the point. So you kind of walk away from the conversation being so confused, so scattered, because you just spent a lot of time and energy listening, but you have no further awareness as to clarity or the answer. If anything, you're more confused. And for the person that is in that energy, operating from that reactive side of the shadow of complexity, there's often a really deep anger inside self because it's not being understood. So there's this desire to be want to be understood by others. There's this pressure and this force of, well, I'm going to make them understand me. I'm going to keep sharing and communicating these ideas, and I'm going to keep repeating myself until they get it. And not understanding that, well, their timing is off. Their force is too much. The vibrational frequency is not resonating with the other. So in both cases, whether you are reactive or you are repressed, it's all about coming back into the breath, coming back into the self to really tap into the higher guidance, to move through the communication naturally by trusting in the right timing and trusting in the right words and not trying to think about the words, not pausing to stop and think, well, what do they want me to say? What do they want to hear? That's operating from a part of you that is not authentic. But it's also catching yourself when you want to say something like, ooh, that would cause hurt. That's not nice. That's an attack. And you catch yourself, you breathe into that, and you don't allow it to come out into form. We're also going to realize how powerful our thoughts are. So even if you're not saying something to hurt another, if you're constantly thinking it, it's in the energy. It's in creation that they're feeling that around you. So that also creates a big disconnect. When we look at the shadow of our complexity versus now what is known as the gift of simplicity, this is almost where I want to take that big breath right in the middle, shifting from this scatteredness of the mind and just how difficult it can be sometimes communicate to, oh, wouldn't it be nice if things were just simple? And that is really how easy it is for us to shift from this into that, from the shadow into the gift aspect. So here we're going to see that the mind thrives on complexity. Your mind wants to make it difficult. It wants to have something to constantly think about, to engage itself. And that is why we find it so hard to embrace simplicity, to sit in the silence, to be still. Our mind does not trust it. So the mind goes, oh, there's the to-do list, right? If you've ever tried sitting in a meditation, how many times do thoughts come in? How many times do you catch yourself wandering into another relationship, a story, the to-do list, like all of those other things, instead of really just embracing the silence and connecting with your breath and feeling at peace in that. So we recognize that, you know what, my mind's not going to like that. So it has to be trained to be still in that. This is where we get muscle memory. It's not I can't meditate. It's how can I learn to be comfortable in meditation? How can I train my mind that there is peace in letting go? So our body knows the natural of it. And whenever you surrender into bed at night, or you just allow yourself to be like, oh, the body just feels so relaxed when we give it that moment to just let go. The mind has a little bit of a harder time catching up to that, but it can absolutely be taught. So there is a natural internal struggle between our mind and our body. And that internal struggle, it eventually goes away when it comes into balance. When we balance the mind, we balance the body, then our spirit rises up. That is the wisdom. And it comes naturally. It's not forced. So it really is as simple as that. It's as simple as relaxing your mind. Get out of the problem. Get out of trying to figure it all out. Give yourself permission to take a break. Relax the body. Go into your stillness. Go into your breath. And then you're allowing that space for wisdom to come through, for the inner spirit to rise you out of the problem and up into the solution. And that brings us into the gift of simplicity, the naturalness of life, the flow of water, the flow and the rhythm of nature itself. And here, communication is very precise, it is clear, and it comes with great economy, which means nothing is wasted and everything is maximized. It's allowing the space to breathe physically, mentally, emotionally, and in doing so, it waits for the way to be cleared and to be shown clearly. So it doesn't react from the mind, and it's not reacting from the emotions. It's not reacting from the physical stress or pressure that I've got to do it and I've got to do it now. It is allowing to be guided. It's allowing for the flow of nature, of life, to flow it in the direction that it's required in. So it really focuses on removing the clutter from life. And that includes the thoughts, right? Getting out of the monkey mind of trying to figure everything out and going, you know what? I don't know how to do this, but they do. So how many times do we call in the higher self? How many times do you ask for help? How many times do you ask for the ego to move aside, to get out of the way? So when you're operating from the gift of simplicity, you're also slowing down. You're not trying to be in the rat race of life. You're not trying to rush around getting everything done on the to-do list. You see the art of being simple, of stepping back and only looking at the essentials, trusting that everything gets done in its own timing. And it's okay to leave the dishes undone. It's okay to leave the bed unmade. It's okay to go outside and just be with nature for a little while, to allow yourself to be replenished and rejuvenated, to then see, well, what is most important to get done? And are you allowing yourself to give from the best of you, from the renewed sense of you, or are you giving from a depleted sense of yourself? So when it slows down, and it slows down the mind, the pressure of the mind, it slows down the body so the breath is more natural, it's more full. You're then falling into a natural rhythm. You're going to just sense it within yourself. And it also starts to release all these attachments to people and situations and outcomes. It's kind of like, they can deal with their stuff. It's okay. They can find an answer to their problem. They can look for that item themselves. They've got this. It's okay. It is what it is. Whatever's going to unfold is going to unfold of its own accord. There's nothing we can do to block that and to prevent it. Maybe the mind says it can, but it's temporary. Guarantee something will happen where that situation will repeat itself because it's meant to for the other person to learn and for yourself to learn. So it also turns very deeply inward to listen, to ask for help, to ask for guidance, to not be so reactive, but to become very responsive. And in doing so, it's rising your vibration to what is known as clear hearing, clear knowing. And in doing so, it starts to become really deaf in tuning out all the lower vibrational frequencies. So it is the art of being able to meditate anywhere, in the middle of hearing a lot of traffic, a lot of background noise, and not letting that bother you. It's the ability to shift and focus on, well, what sounds bring me peace? What sounds help center me? What sounds help bring me into balance? The world around us is not going to change for us to be in harmony. We have to be in harmony first and then watch the world around us change. So it's going inwards to then push vibration outwards. When you meet somebody that has embodied the gift of simplicity and you're in the presence of them, anything that you thought was a problem just dissolves away. They just have this way of offering their insight and speaking in such a clear way that whatever you thought was difficult just appears very easy. It's just that simple. And you find your whole presence just relaxing around them. The mind's releasing its pressure. It stops seeking that complexity. It opens up to embrace simplicity. These individuals are going to find the simplest way to get something done. So they are masters at efficiency, and they're very playful in that. And it's often extremely humorous at how simple the solution is, what they come up with in order to help to move through a problem. So the gift of simplicity is neither logical or abstract. It is mystical in nature and it arises of its own accord. It simply knows things spontaneously without knowing where the knowing came from. It is playful and humorous. It is the essence of genius. And when we move into the highest light aspect within Gate 23, this is known as the study of quintessence. Quintessence is known as the fifth element, ether, and that is found within all things. So we have the four main elements, earth, air, fire, water. Well, all of this space, ether, is spirit. It is the unseen, and there's so much more of the unseen that is supporting everything. Well, that's known as the quintessent. So at the highest level, the highest frequency, words are simply vibrations. And here we have the custodian of our sacred truth. And that truth is to trust in your own inner path before any external teaching or teacher. And this really plays into the teachings of the Buddha. And I like how my little hand was raised in the corner there. I answered my own question. This really comes from the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha really said, you have to listen to your own path. You can't listen to the instructions of somebody else because you're always going to get their opinion of how they want you to live your life and the direction they believe you should head towards. You're the only one that knows what is right for you. You're the only one that can awaken the soul aspect within yourself that rises you to the highest potential, that then brings out into the world its fullest offering. So we have all of this space, all of this unseen world that is supporting us. We live in earth. We live in a marble that is literally floating in the vastness of space. There is nothing more supportive than that. So you are supported. We are all supported. You can trust in your ability to receive and to articulate and to bring to life that which you are here to do. But first, you have to build the foundation of you, the structure of you, the belief in you. You have to know who you are. And when you know who you are, then you know who you're not. You know what doesn't sound right to you, what doesn't feel right to you, what is not of your truth. So you build a structure, but you build a divine structure, not a self-enclosed prison. And it really is about embracing the simpleness of life, connecting with your joy, your happiness, your flow, your rhythm, your timing, not trying to get into step with somebody else's. That is their flow. So this is a beautiful opportunity for some deep reflection. I look forward to connecting in our last gate activation as we start to end out Taurus season and then move into the season of Gemini, moving from the earth now into the air element, and also bringing us into the second gate activation of that ring of water. So knowing that right now in gate 23, we are standing literally in the crossroads of the ring of water, learning to anchor ourselves either in the complexity of trying to hold everything together or allowing ourselves to feel and experience the natural pulses, the natural timing, the natural flow of communication without overthinking it and over planning it and just letting it be. And the more authentic you can be, the deeper your relationships can be because people have the freedom to be themselves in your presence. When we try to be somebody we're not and we adopt an identity of who we are not, there's just this vibration around us that is fake, that is false, that is trying too hard, that is trying to be a perfectionist. And eventually those structures fall apart as they are meant to. So you may be going through a period in your life where it feels like everything's falling apart, but you will rebuild that foundation stronger. You'll be able to stand in the truth of you because what is meant to be yours cannot be taken away. So you will find who you are, you will find your balance, but it requires you to trust in yourself. So enjoy this contemplation, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.